I am 104 years old, and 3 months ago, I found a letter that ruined the story I've been telling myself for 80 years. It was never opened. It was addressed to me, and it was written by the only person who ever truly saw through me. If you stay with me, I'll tell you what it said. But first, you need to understand the kind of man I was. At 23, I believed in one thing above all else: the future. Not love, not presence, not joy. The future. I was obsessed with building a life impressive enough that no one could question it. I wanted security, respect, proof that I mattered. And I met Eleanor in the summer of 1945. She laughed easily. She walked slowly. She noticed small things: birds, sunlight on brick, the way wind moved through trees. I noticed opportunities. She would sit with a cup of tea and say, "Isn't this nice?" And I would say, "Just wait until we have more. More money, more space, more time, more." We were engaged by autumn. The wedding was planned. And then I was offered a partnership in a new business venture out west. Risky, ambitious, the kind of opportunity young men convince themselves defines their destiny. "It's just for a few years," I told her. "We'll have the rest of our lives." She didn't argue. She just looked at me in a way I didn't understand at the time. "You're always leaving before you've even gone," she said. I thought she was being emotional. I thought I was being practical. So I left. We wrote letters for a while. Hers were full of details: neighbors, books she was reading, the way the town smelled after rain. Mine were full of projections, revenue, expansion plans. Then the letters slowed. Then they stopped. Life filled in the silence. The business worked. I succeeded. I became the kind of man people introduce with numbers. I married someone kind. We had 2 children. We bought a house with a staircase that curved dramatically, the kind that says, "You've made it." And I told myself the story many successful people tell. This is what winning looks like. But here's what I didn't notice. I was never fully in the room. At dinner, I was solving problems. On vacation, I was calculating growth. At my son's baseball game, I was thinking 3 moves ahead. I was physically present, but mentally elsewhere. And that kind of absence is invisible at first. It doesn't explode. It erodes. My daughter once asked me, when she was maybe 8 years old, "Dad, where do you go when you stare like that?" I laughed. I said, "Nowhere." But she was right. I was always going somewhere else. Even when I was home. At 58, I had my first heart attack. It was not cinematic. No dramatic collapse. No final speech. Just pressure in my chest while reviewing paperwork. I remember lying in the hospital bed that night, staring at the ceiling tiles. For the first time in my life, there was nothing to plan, nothing to build, nothing to optimize, just breathing. And do you know what terrified me? Not death. Emptiness. I realized I didn't know how to simply be. My entire identity had been constructed around becoming. Becoming richer. Becoming respected. Becoming secure. But I had never practiced being. I recovered. And I promised myself I would slow down. You can guess what happened. I slowed down for about 6 months. Then the business needed me again. There was another expansion. Another opportunity. Another reason to delay presence. That's the trick. Life never runs out of reasons to postpone itself. Now, let's go back to the attic. 3 months ago. Storm outside. Power out. Candles flickering. I was 104 years old and climbing through boxes like an archaeologist in my own life. And there it was. A cream envelope. My name written in Eleanor's handwriting. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with age. It had been sent to an old address decades ago. Forwarded late. Tucked into a book. Forgotten. 72 years sealed. I opened it carefully. Inside, she wrote, "I don't think you're choosing work over me. I think you're choosing the future over the present. And I hope one day you realize the present was the only place we ever lived." I had to sit down, because she understood me better at 22 than I understood myself at 104. I built an entire life preparing to live, preparing to relax, preparing to enjoy, preparing to feel safe enough to be still. And all the while, the only place life was happening was in the ordinary moments I kept postponing. My wife, the woman I did marry, passed away 9 years ago. She was gentle, patient, stronger than I deserved. In her final months, she once said to me, "You don't have to earn rest anymore." I didn't know how to answer that, because I had never believed rest was something you simply take. I believed it was something you qualify for. And here is the truth that frightens me when I think about your generation. You're even more distracted than I was. You don't even need ambition to leave the present anymore. You have endless noise, endless scrolling, endless comparison, endless input. You can leave the moment without ever standing up. You think you'll remember these years. You won't. You'll remember flashes, a laugh, a look, a goodbye. The rest will blur. Because attention determines memory, and memory determines the story you tell yourself at the end. I sit by this window most afternoons now. The light comes in around 4:30 in a way that makes everything look softer. And I think about Eleanor. I don't regret building a life. I regret living so little of it while I was building it. That is different. If I could speak to you, not as a motivational figure, not as a wise old man, but as someone who has run out of later, I would say this: stop waiting to arrive. Stop treating this phase of your life as the preface. Stop postponing joy until you feel worthy of it. The present is not a stepping stone. It is the only ground you will ever stand on. One day, someone you love will say something completely ordinary to you for the last time. You will not know it is the last time. That is how life ends. In normalcy, not in fireworks. In Tuesdays, in half-finished conversations. In see you tomorrow. I am 104 years old. My body is quieter now. My world is smaller. My phone rarely rings. And if I could trade every achievement, every accolade, every financial milestone for more depth in the moments I skim past, I would. Not because success is wrong, but because presence is rarer. Build your future, but do not live there. Because the future never becomes the future. It becomes today, and today is the only place love exists. The only place memory is formed. The only place your life is actually happening. Look up, before it becomes a letter you find too late. And now, at 1:04, when the house is quiet and the light fades earlier than I expect, I understand something with painful clarity. Life was never asking me to conquer it. It was asking me to notice it. All those years I spent preparing to finally feel alive. I was already inside the very thing I was postponing. The laughter at the dinner table. The tired smile of my wife across the room. The small hand tugging at my sleeve. That was it. That was the whole thing. And if you remember nothing else from my story, remember this: you cannot relive a moment you refused to live the first time. So be here, fully, messily, imperfectly, because one day, without announcement, the ordinary will become the irreplaceable, and you'll either hold it with gratitude or search for it in memory.